Our next speaker is Laurie S2, and is Laurie in the house today? Okay, come on up. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Laurie S2.
And I'm here to talk about kinship care. I'm here to talk about my case, other people's, and what happens in trying to get custody of children. I decided to talk about my own experience in guardianship and then adoption, and the obstacle system is placed in the way by DHS, the private agencies, the caseworkers, the courts, foster parents, as well as my experience as a foster parent. I'm here to tell you the way families and children are treated by the system is appalling, and my own experience was horrific. My story is not unique. It's not some kind of anomaly. I've talked to hundreds of families over the past 10 years since my grandchildren were taken. Families seeking kinship care, parents whose children were removed, former foster children, now grown adults, and former foster children whose children have also been taken. I've heard many horror stories from traumatized families. The stories vary, but some things remain the same. And this is true in Michigan and throughout the country. Children are often removed unnecessarily. They are traumatized. Many former foster children report being stolen from good families. But some will tell you there were a variety of problems in their own family, but almost 100% will tell you that they were abused while they were in foster care. The families all report being alienated from the children, being denied visits, children being told no one in your family wants you or loves you. Your family is bad, and many other things. One of my own grandchildren told me, I want to live with you, but I don't want to go to hell. I asked, why do you think you would go to hell? They said we were told, the counselor told Andrea, she was the caseworker, and our foster parents, that they shouldn't live with me, and if they did, the gates of hell would open wide, and they would go to hell. I know I'm not the only one here who's been involved with the system. I know many of you have. I don't think there are too many who have had a positive view. If there are, I'd like to hear from you. But there are many people who have a negative view of the foster system and their experience with that, the courts, and all of the other services that have been thrust upon them. My grandchildren were removed, and any positive views I had of these agencies quickly faded as reality offered a much different experience. Prior to them being taken, I assumed that only kids who were really abused or badly neglected were removed from their homes, that there was a reason for it. I never thought that caseworkers would actually tell lies, that even court attorneys would tell lies, the guardian ad litem, or the prosecutors. I never thought that happened. It never even crossed my mind. I was told the children couldn't be placed with me. I asked if I could meet the foster parents. I was told there would be no contact. I sent gifts which were returned to me. I asked for phone calls, which were denied. I pushed on, growing increasingly frustrated. I called and called DHS and private agency. I called and called DHS and the private agencies, talking to one caseworker after another, each time asking to speak to the previous one supervisor, and going back and forth between DHS and Holy Cross Services, Children's Services, and later it was Bethany Christian Services. They are the ones who adopted my grandchildren to the foster parents. None of these agencies were in the least bit helpful. I couldn't even get any information on how I should go about trying to get my grandchildren. I live in Florida, my grandchildren were here in Michigan. I finally walked into the office in Florida and I asked, what do I need to do to get my grandchildren from Michigan back here? And they told me I needed the ICPC. Then I began calling DHS and Holy Cross. Holy Cross told me DHS needed to send it. DHS told me Holy Cross needed to send it. And we went round and round. And it took several months before it was ever sent out. After a diligent pursuit, I was finally able to get visits and phone calls. Caseworkers did everything possible to either prevent or disrupt them. When I went to my first visit, the children were happy to see me and asked if they could come live with me. The youngest one cried and wouldn't let go of me when it was time to go, and the caseworker had to pull her off of me. And as she was putting her in the car, the caseworker looked so annoyed that she continued to cry. The caseworker reported at the next hearing that the children didn't remember me. One visit they set up for me, I was supposed to get off a plane in Kent County, get my luggage, a rental car, and drive up to Cadillac, Michigan in an hour. Cadillac, Michigan is about 100 miles away. They would often change visit dates and times, hoping I wouldn't be able to make it. Sometimes I couldn't, sometimes I could. The caseworker and the foster parents would tell the children I didn't want them or love them. I was bad, I caused trouble, I'm rude, I'm mean, I'm cruel, and on and on. The children became increasingly fearful when the caseworkers were present. The children reported being punished for things they said, or for even giving me a hug or acting happy to see me. One visit I had was at the zoo. Prior to our visit, the family and caseworkers had a family meeting. 3 Holy Cross employees who were in supervisory positions were present, but they had to wait outside the gates as this was to be my first unsupervised visitation. The children initially behaved as if they were afraid. As we went in, the children asked over and over again, can they still see us? Until I told them no, they can't see us here. Then the children finally relaxed. They played, they were happy, they had fun. They gave me hugs, they enjoyed themselves until it was time to leave. As we were leaving, we stopped at the bathrooms. The oldest girl began crying. She said her foster father was going to take her to a utility room and slap her hands. I tried to reassure her, but she insisted, stating they know everything and they'll know. You just don't understand. He hits so much harder than she does. I forwarded this to the agency supervisors who were present. My heart sunk as I told them, and they said they'd let the foster parents know what the kids said. I thought that was the exact thing she was worried about happening. After they left, I cried. I felt hopeless and helpless in this horrible situation that was thrust on us by a government agency that did the opposite of what it was supposed to do. In the morning, after not sleeping very well, I felt the agency was only making things worse and would probably not even look into it. I decided to call Muskegon County DHS, the agency that removed the children from their home. I relayed what my granddaughter told me about having her hands slapped, and that Holy Cross's reaction was to simply tell the foster parents about it, and that was the very thing she was afraid of. Michigan took the report and said it would be forwarded to Mecosta County DHS, as that agency investigated in Osceola County where the children were living. I called Mecosta County the next day to make sure that they got the report. Mecosta County told me the children were taken to the ER and there were no bruises on their butts. I didn't quite know what to say to that. I never reported that, and I let them know exactly what I reported. When I told her about the hand slapping, there was nothing but silence on the other end for several minutes, and then they quickly ended the call. The next court date, the guardian ad litem stated I reported sexual abuse and caused the girls to have full sexual exams in the ER after that visit. I had many more traumatic visits, and we were subjected to many more lies in the courtroom. I did everything Michigan required of me, including becoming a foster parent myself. In my classes to become a foster parent, we were told the importance of children having family photos and helping them make scrapbooks for their memories. My next visit I brought family photos and told the children they could each pick out a few. Each of the 4 children picked the photos they wanted to keep. During the visit, I had just one worker supervising. Usually I had 2 or more because they felt I was so dangerous. I wasn't dangerous because I'd ever been arrested or I'd ever been violent in any way or anything else. I was dangerous because I was qualified to take the children, and that would disrupt their plans. However, during this visit, the supervisor was continually calling the worker to get updates on what the children were doing and what was happening. When she learned the children were given family pictures, she told the worker they could not have them and told her to tell me to take them away. And she told me that. I refused. So the supervisor asked to speak to me. I got on the phone and she began yelling at me to take the pictures. I again refused and she kept yelling and she said, "You know the rules." And I said, The rules I learned in foster care classes were quite different. Could she please send me a written copy of these rules so I would know what they were? Needless to say, I never got anything about any rules. She continued yelling at me to take the pictures, so I set the phone down and I just walked away. She called the worker back and told her she would have to take the pictures since I refused. She told the children to to get the pictures back. The girls looked very sad and they set their pictures down. The oldest boy said, "No, they're mine." The caseworker got up to take them and he ran. She chased him until she caught him. She tackled him. She held him on the ground and she pried those pictures from his hands while he was crying, "No, no, they're mine." Many of these types of things happen. The children are treated as nothing more than a commodity that they have control of with no regard for the trauma they cause the children. The stress, sadness, and trauma we all endured was unbelievable and by far the worst experience of my life. I cried, I couldn't sleep. When I did sleep, I had nightmares. Every time I talked to them or had a visit, I either heard fear or sadness in their voices. When I heard that, it just felt like somebody punched me in the gut. I continued to fight for the children. My guardianship was denied. I lost the Section 45 hearing. I appealed the guardianship, and the appellate court sided with me. I brought the children home to Florida. A few days later, Michigan had put in an appeal to the Michigan Supreme Court, and they got a stay, and they came and got the children and returned them to Michigan. That was the last time I've been able to visit with the children. I've seen the children only because I know where they live, and I've gone up there and I've seen them, but I'm not allowed to have any visits. At one time I went to the children's church. I went there actually twice, and the second time I went, it was just one time, one year, and one time the next year. The second time I went, they called the police. And the police were outside waiting for me when I got out of church. The children are adopted. After I lost guardianship and the Section 45, and I was denied discovery in court, I heard others were getting some information by filing Freedom of Information Act requests. So I did that. While CPS reports aren't released, the special investigation reports done by the agency are. I was able to get the foster parents home study. I also got some special investigation reports. I learned that the foster family had been investigated prior to my reporting anything for putting hot sauce and fish oil in the children's mouths and making them run laps around their house. And in that report, the foster mother also admitted to slapping their hands, which is why I believe the phone just went to silence when I was talking to the person in Mecosta County. Also, I reported another time, I reported a few times birds I saw in the children because I didn't know how they got them. The third child had burns on 2 different occasions, and the fourth child had burns on 2 different occasions. There was no special investigation on that in anything I got. After they were returned to Michigan from my home, they were investigated again for spanking. The foster parents, for all these investigations, were found to be in non-compliance and were given corrective action plans. The caseworker told them it was, and this is in one of the reports, the caseworker told them it was prohibited by the foster care rules to spank. But if they did, nothing would be done. Although corporal punishment is prohibited in foster care, but ultimately nothing is ever done, they will go through the motions. But if it continues, they just look the other way. Now, I have told you what our family endured. I'd like to tell you my experience fostering. I became a foster parent as part of the ICPC requirements to get my grandchildren. First, there are classes. We met once a week for several months. I met other prospective foster parents. Everyone signed in when they got there, and on the form, they had to state whether they wanted to be just foster parents or if they were fostering to adopt. And that would direct the placements of children. While going through the classes, you quickly learn about the other parents that are there. One man asked, how many chances do these dead parents get before they are terminated? Others talked about their dreams of adoption. Some had moved here from other states and were getting licensed in a new state. There were older people who were career foster parents. There was just one that I could tell would really work with parents and try to help them, and she was very frank about it. The classes and subsequent meetings of foster parents were always very upbeat with lots of pats on the back and an almost cultish sense of superiority. The caseworkers in this instance were always very nice to me, which was quite the opposite of how I was treated as a family member. At first, I said I wasn't going to take any foster children as I was trying to get my grandchildren home. But as the months and the years went by, while I was fighting for them, I decided to see for myself what the other side was like. I offered to take only short-term cases in case I were to get my grandchildren back. One little girl I had was split from her siblings, and she was in a foster home. I was told it was because she was a handful all by herself. She got to my house, and as soon as she got there, she ran from one end of the house to the other, and she did that repeatedly. Every adult she met, she called Mama or Dad. She never slowed down. She wanted to be home with her mom and her dad, and she told me about it often. I took her as a respite case, and I was called again several more times to take her. Her and her siblings were ultimately reunited with their parents. They were a handful, I was told, and the caseworkers worked very hard getting placements for them. Eventually, they worked very hard for reunification. I learned that part of what drives reunification is the amount of difficulty they have placing the child. I learned adoptable and easily placed children are more likely to have their parents' rights terminated and less likely to be placed with family. Not only do these factors influence placement, reunification, and termination, they also influence which children are taken into care. I had other short-term placements lasting a week or two. Then I was asked to take a sibling group of 3. I did, and I had them for 6 months. During that time I had them, I was asked if they were adoptable. I was asked about the family members. The oldest girl wanted to live with her grandmother. The middle boy wanted his mother. The youngest seemed very confused about who and where he belonged. They told me stories of previous foster care placements. They said they were locked in their rooms at night. They weren't allowed to get out until the foster parents got up and unlocked the door. It didn't matter if they had to go to the bathroom. Nothing mattered. They had to stay locked in the room. They told me at one foster placement, the foster father would shower with one of the boys. They told me that their foster mother used to go to the drive-up window to get ice cream for her children, but wouldn't get them any. I enjoyed having them, but I knew it was best for them to be with their own family. They were lucky they went to live with their grandmother, but not until I won my appeal and I told the agency I was getting my grandchildren did they let them go with their grandmother. I still have a relationship with them and their grandmother. At one point, the children and their grandmother even moved in with me for 6 months. While they were living with me, I took the kids to the park and I ran into one of the caseworkers who was there with his own child. He was surprised to see me with the kids because he knew they were back with their grandmother and came over to talk to me. I told him I take the kids to the park and I watch them sometimes. He said he'd like to see that happen with more families, but still seemed very shocked by what he was seeing. While family placement is supposed to be a priority, according to federal law, it is more often viewed by caseworkers as something they have to find a way around and avoid so they can keep control of the case. In case after case of families I've spoken with, social workers choose to place the children with their chosen recruited foster families. In many cases, the agencies promise adoption to the foster families. In Michigan, this practice is illegal, yet my grandchildren reported that they were told at the very beginning they were going to be adopted. And other families I have talked to have also reported this practice. Some families eventually get custody of their children. However, when they eventually get the children home, the children have spent months and sometimes even years in foster placements. Sometimes several placements, and they're very traumatized once they come home. And then the family has to deal with that and has to try to heal these children. Each and every time I've been to a CPS hearing, the caseworker was sitting with the prosecutor. This is the same person, this caseworker, who is supposed to help reunite the children with their parents and help the parents with services and what they need. Yet clearly they are working with the prosecutor to sever those relationships. When looking at this relationship with its built-in conflicts of interest, it's important to look at funding. Under current federal law, ASPA, the Adoption and Safe Families Act, and CAPTA, the Child Abuse and Prevention Act, federal funds are made available to the states based upon the number of children taken into state care and the length of time they remain in that state's custody. A report in the Beckley, West Virginia Register Herald that was reported after the Family First Act passed quoted Bill Crouch, West Virginia's Secretary of Health and Human Resources as saying, "The federal government has always paid us only when we pull children from their homes." So the Family First Act will provide funds, will make funds available to keep children in their homes. I'm sure it will help in keeping some children in their homes. I'm not sure it will help in getting relative placements or to assist in reunification with their parents. It is a step in the right direction, but a very small step that will benefit just a few. Until real due process occurs and parents are innocent until proven guilty and conflicts of interest are eliminated, families will never see justice. As long as agencies are rewarded for receiving funds for removing children and adopting them to other families, abuses will continue in order to secure that funding. And as long as states receive bonuses for their adoptions, they will continue to look the other way on these abuses. Courts are also receiving money from the Title IV funds, which in turn affects their opinions. Psychologists and other professionals are rewarded with more cases when they report according to what the caseworkers want, whether it's accurate or not. Under the current system, most parents are never charged with a crime, let alone convicted, and a series of allegations is treated as proof, resulting in termination of parental rights. In the process of not bothering with actual evidence, the number of children taken into care is exploding, causing the system to be overloaded, and lawmakers are constantly pleading for more money. Meanwhile, children who are suffering real abuse are being left to suffer and die. Our lawmakers and DHS workers refer to this overreach as erring on the side of the child. When children are being traumatized by unnecessary removals and termination of all family relationships, while others are left to be abused, I cannot believe anything other than they are erring to the detriment of children and families. I believe we can do better. Families need better protection with due process, not just the appearance of due process. All interactions with professionals should be recorded, and all records should be included in discovery and be allowed to be seen. Judges and other government employees should not have immunity, as this promotes corruption and injustice and does not provide equal justice under the law. No child should have their rights to have a relationship with their parents or other family members severed unless the family has been convicted of a crime against that child. Thank you for listening. Are there any questions?
Does anybody have any questions for Laurie? That was a very compelling story, her experience that she's sharing with us. And it's really hard for me to see up here, but I will come down.
Suffered a lot. How did you cope and deal with the severe amount of stress that you endured?
It was very difficult. I did the best I can. I've been in emergency room nurse for a very long time, so I'm quite used to stressful situations. But having this happen in my family was by far the most stressful situation I've ever been in. Eventually it took its toll on me and I began to have some health problems. 6 months or 8 months after the children were returned to Michigan after I got them, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I feel like a lot of that was my immune system was down. I don't know how many of you have heard about the cortisol connection. When you're stressed, your cortisol levels rise, your immunity then goes down, and you're subjected to more illnesses, and that's what happened to me. So I recovered from breast cancer. I cannot say that chemotherapy and the surgeries and everything that went with cancer was actually worse than what I went through with family court. It wasn't fun, I can tell you that. But it isn't as bad as what I went through with family court.
Laurie, thank you for sharing all that with us. I know it's so hard. I do want you to know that under the Families First Services and Prevention Act, part of that program is the Kinship Navigator program. And it is, it's going to be very difficult because the program is still optional for the states, which is a problem. And we know, those of us who are working in this, know that the locomotive is in motion. And to change the direction of the locomotive, it's going to take more than just a bill. There are all kinds of finances and money behind it. Part of the program is to redirect funds to the first 12 months of involvement of an agency with a family for family preservation. And specifically, it talks about the Kinship Navigator program. So I think it would be very helpful if you, as having been a grandparent going through that process, if you would start to maybe just kind of outline in 12 steps, maybe a 12-step program for grandparents or relatives as to facing the problem, and then, the exact things to do very proactively. I know as an attorney, one of the things I have found when parents first get involved, and a lot of times the grandparents, and I can understand this because I'm a grandparent, and if my grandkids got sucked into the system, at first the grandparents say, I want my own children to step up and be parents. I want them to have a chance. I want them to do what they need to do. I'm willing to stand back and see if they'll do that. And unfortunately, the way the system is made, if you're not, in the way the law is in Tennessee, they now actually say, if you are not the first placement at removal, then, and I mean the grandparent, if you're not the first placement at the removal, you no longer have priority, which is not the federal law, but that's the way the states are interpreting that. So, it would be very helpful having been a grandparent who's just been chopped off at the knees for this, if you would kind of outline that, and, you can't not right this minute, but, kind of say, here's the 12-step program, and make some recommendations, because one thing I hope to do is then take that Kinship Navigator program out to the other states.
That's a very good suggestion, Connie. I will work on that. Thank you for your comments.
Any other questions? If not, then Laurie, thank you so very much for sharing, and we appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, Laurie.